word comes to us today from the Gospel according to Matthew, and it's found at chapter 25 and the first 13 verses. Matthew chapter 25, verses 1 through 13. Again, I'll be reading from the New International Version, so if yours sounds a bit different from mine, that's the reason. Matthew chapter 25, commencing with verse 1. Says, at that time the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish and 5 were wise. The foolish ones took their lamps and did not take any oil with them. The wise, however, took oil in jars along with their lamps. The bridegroom was a long time in coming, and they all became drowsy and fell asleep. At midnight, cry rang out, here's the bridegroom, come out to meet him. Then all the virgins woke up and trimmed their lamps. The foolish one said to the wise, give us some of your oil, our lamps are going out. No, they replied, there may not be enough for both us and you. Instead, go to those who sell oil and buy some for yourselves. But while they were on their way to buy the oil, the bridegroom arrived. The virgins who were ready went in with him to the wedding banquet. And the door was shut. Later, the others also came. Sir, they said, open the door for us. But he replied, I tell you the truth, I don't know you. Therefore keep watch, because you do not know the day or the hour. God bless his word. For just a few minutes today, I want to talk to you from this topic. I want to talk about the church's obligation to people without extra oil. The church's obligation to people without extra oil. No matter who you are, where you've been, or what you've done, God loves you. Hopefully today's sermon is going to be the first in a series of sermons that's going to deal with the church's response and obligation to the least ones. The least ones. Who are the least ones, you might ask? Well, let's see. The least ones, these are people in our culture, I think, who are being overlooked by the church because they're considered to be unimportant. Can you believe that? That the church would consider anybody to be unimportant? On the surface, that seems to be preposterous. Yet, as preposterous as it may seem and sound, it's true. Today, I want to raise an awareness among us. I want us to start thinking about something. We, as a church, need to reach out to those people that we so often overlook. Do I need to say that one over there? I think we need to reach out to the people that we so often overlook. And the really sad thing is that we so often overlook them out of a sense of self-righteousness. All right. Have you ever heard anybody condemn somebody else who's doing something, but you know for yourself that they used to do the same thing? But now they done got old and holy. Did you notice I put the two together? Because some folk get holy when they get old. I'm gonna let that alone. So many times we overlook people out of our own sense of self-righteousness. Walk with me, if you will. Walk with me for a few minutes today. I want to take another look at one of those familiar stories in the New Testament. Today, I want to deal with the story of the 10 virgins as recorded in Matthew chapter 25. For our purposes here, I want to address something that's really not spelled out in the story. I want to take some liberties here. I want to stretch this thing a little bit. I want to examine. I want to look at the response and the sense of obligation that the church should have toward people like those 5 foolish virgins. You know, we call them the 5 foolish virgins. And according to the story, they were foolish. But I want to take it. I want to look at, does the church have a responsibility? Does the church have any kind of obligation to people like that? Most often, when we talk about it, when we study this little story, we put the emphasis on the foolishness of the 5 virgins. And we can easily point out the fact that they were not fully prepared for anything out of the expected. This time, my wife gets on me all the time because I don't like to wear a top coat. I don't like to sit up in the car with all of that stuff on me. Ain't no meeting line. I'll go to the house. I'll go out of the house to the car. I ain't got a damn coat on. But I do have a coat in the car. In case something happens, I have. Am I making any sense there? I still ain't gonna put the coat on to go from the house to the car. Maybe I should. Maybe at my age, at 49, I need to start wearing. Maybe I need to start wearing. But I just ain't gonna. But I am prepared. I do have a coat in the car. When we think about this story, we point out the fact that they were not fully prepared for anything out of the expected. They had oil in their lamps for the now, but not for the after a while. All right. How many? Don't raise your hand, but how many of y'all got any money for after a while? You got 50 cents to buy. 50 cents when you buy a hamburger, or whatever, you know. You got something for now, but then have you got anything for after a while? It's true. It's true that we do need to see. We do need to recognize their short-sightedness. All of that is well and good. I'm not denying that. But as the church, we have a responsibility to help people to prepare for the after a while. All right. We have an obligation to help them to realize that they need to be equipped for the right now and for the after a while. That's why today's sermon, that's what today's sermon is going to be about. What's going to be the response? What's going to be the obligation of the church to those people who don't prepare for life's and eternity's need for some extra oil? How many of you know that even before you get to heaven, wherever you're going, before you get there, sometimes you're going to run into something when you're going to need a little something extra right here. Everybody talking about when I get to heaven, I want to get something right here, but I'm going to make some preparations. You see, I need something for when the storm is slapping me upside the head right here. I need something that can give me some assurance, some reassurance, some help, some confidence right here. When I get to heaven, heaven's going to take care of itself. Well, I'm going to carry me a sandwich with me. Yeah, I'm going to carry me a suit with me, y'all. There's a suit, there's something in my casket. So if I get hungry on the trip. Don't miss visitors. Don't worry about it. This only happens at Southern Miss. Don't miss this point. Don't miss this point. All 10 virgins were going. All 10 virgins were on their way to meet the bridegroom before the wedding. For whatever reason, the bridegroom's arrival was delayed. It got late, and he still hadn't come. So what happened? They were getting sleepy. They fell asleep. All of them fell asleep, waiting for the bridegroom to come. Now here's the major turning point in the story. The 5 virgins referred to as the wise ones had oil in the lamps that they were carrying, but they also had some extra oil in some jars. The 5 virgins referred to as foolish didn't bother carrying any extra oil. They had their lamps, but they didn't have any extra oil. They were not prepared for the unexpected. I learned something years ago. My mother used to always tell me this, and I wasn't paying a whole lot of attention, but she always told me don't leave home hungry. I was a youngster, and somewhere we had to go for something, and they said, you know, I didn't know what it was. They said they were having continental breakfast. So I didn't eat before I left home. Because the continental breakfast, I figured we were going somewhere, we were going to have this big spread of a little something from this country and that country. And I figured I was going to pig out at the continental breakfast. When I got there, they had some donuts, some coffee, some juice, and some water. I ain't ate that since I've been alive. When I got off the breast milk, I started eating eggs, bacon, sausage. Been drinking coffee since I was about 3 years old. Grandmama would let me have it. Am I making any sense here? I went unexpecting. I went unprepared for what they had. So now, whenever I go anywhere, I done it before I leave home. Don't go nowhere at home. Somebody ought to learn something from that. They were not prepared for the unexpected. What might this suggest? It could suggest that they were only concerned about the right now. It could suggest that they assumed that if they needed any extra oil, the stores would be open or people would be willing to go out of their way to help them during their time of distress. You know anybody who doesn't make any provisions, but if they run out of stuff, they know that they can come to you and get it. That's all right every now and then, but some folk always. I know I ain't walking up and down nobody's street that's in here, but you know anybody like this, huh? Here is the challenge. Here is the challenge to the church. Whether they ought to or not, many of the people who live and interact with, we live with and interact with, are not concerned about after a while. They're only concerned about right now. They're not stopping long enough to think about tomorrow and what might happen. Many are not even concerned about the next half hour. Well, does the church, watch this now, does the church have an obligation to stand on the wall and cry out a warning to those who may be unconcerned about the future? Here's something else that's just as important. Many people operate under the assumption that there'll always be somebody who will be able to help them out when they get into that proverbial pinch. Therefore, they feel like they can be like that fabled grasshopper and fiddle their time away. They've not stopped to realize that there may not always be time to take up the slack at the last minute. What is the obligation of the church to these people? What is the obligation of the church to people who are not thinking about after a while? There are people who are living outside of a real and meaningful relationship with Jesus. They might say that they believe in God, but what they really mean is that they believe that God exists. You see, there's a difference in believing that God exists and believing in God, having a relationship with God. You see, believing that God exists can be symbolic of the virgins having some oil in their lamps. But when the trials of life, when the storms and disappointments of life come at unexpected time, they'll have no spiritual source to lean upon. You know, you need a source of power in your life. You need to have something going on in your life so that when the storm comes, you have something to fall back on. When the storm comes, that's not the time to be looking for an umbrella. You need to have an umbrella all along. our text. When the bridegroom finally arrived, all the lamps had burned out or were just about burned out of oil. The 5 virgins who had brought some extra oil put new oil into their lamps and went to meet the bridegroom. These 5 virgins who had brought no extra oil couldn't go and meet the bridegroom because they didn't have any oil in their lamps. They weren't prepared. Some folk feel that they're going to get up to the gates, whatever that may be, and say, Lord, can I go back and join the church? I think I need to let you in on something. I think you better do it before then. I think maybe you ought to see about establishing a relationship with God before the last minute. Here's something to think about. So often people go through life equipped with moral values, which will serve them in many cases for the right now, but they don't have that other something that they'll need in the event of the unexpected. You see, it's good to have moral values. Moral values have their purpose. Moral values have their place. Yet there are some times in life when we're going to need a source of help, when we're going to need a power source to sustain us that goes beyond what our moral values can do for us. There's sometimes in life when I'm going to be going through something, I just need somebody to hold my hand. Anybody ever been there? Just knowing that somebody bigger than you is holding your hand can give you enough strength and power and courage to go through whatever it is that you have to go through. Moral values are important. Moral values are necessary, but there are some times when we're going to need something that supersedes our sense of morality. Here's a proposal that I want to present to you. It's the job of the church to work with those who are outside of our fellowship.
All right.
Did you get that? The job of the church is to work with those, I think, who are outside of our fellowship. Too many times we spent too much time having a happy time with the saints. And we've left the other folk out there. We've come in here talking about them, but we haven't reached out to them. You see, it's the obligation of the church to share with them that it's necessary that they be prepared for what's going to happen even before it happens.
Yeah.
Young people, that's why old folk tell you stuff all the time. All the time, we're not condemning you. Some of the time, we're telling you some stuff because we done already been there. We've already fallen into the ditch and we got a chance to climb out. And we see you headed toward the ditch. Sometimes we're trying to don't go that way. Every once in a while, you ought to put that stuff in that big notebook that's in your head. Don't throw everything out that the old folks say. Put it in that big notebook in your head. And then at a time when you really need it, you're going to think you ain't got no help. That stuff will come from the back of your head to the front. You know that old man, mama, daddy, somebody told me this. I better try that. You might find that it works. The job of the church, the obligation of the church is, I think, we are required to help raise an awareness in people that there are some uncertainties in life. You see, everything in life doesn't fall conveniently in place. Some things ought to happen. Some things are supposed to happen, but they don't always happen. And some things don't happen until you do your part to help make it happen. Let me see. I'm just about to. So let me see if I can throw this. This is on paper, so I'm just going to share. Can I share this secret with you? in my personal opinion. Many of you know I've been in this church all my life. I've been in church all my life. All I know is church. I was in church. I said, I got to be like the other folks. So I got me some sin, but I stayed in the church. Somebody catch that after a while. But I've always been kind of an impatient people. I don't like nothing that's too long. See, when I was going to church, church started at 11 o'clock and didn't get out till about 1, 1:30, sometimes early to 2. I never did like that. After about an hour, I started getting enough. After an hour and a half, I sure enough got enough. But I couldn't do anything about it. But the Lord messed around and called me to preach and pastor. He put me in charge. And you know what I said? I said, I ain't staying in church that long. Because I'm in charge of making up the program. That's why y'all might see me looking funny when somebody's talking too long. I'm just letting you know some stuff y'all didn't know. What am I really trying to say? Sometimes when you want to see change, you got to be involved to help make the change. That's all I'm saying. It's easy to stand on the outside and talk about what ought to be, but sometimes you got to get involved. Everything in life does not conveniently fall into place. There are some unexpecteds, my word, unexpecteds. I don't think you'll see that in the dictionary. But there are some unexpecteds in life. The obligation of the church, I think, is to help people to deal with the unexpecteds. In case somebody didn't know it. Our job is not to condemn people for not having extra oil. Our job is to recognize that they need some oil. And then do all we can to see if we can help them to get some oil. Help them to get some oil so that they can also relate to this heavenly bridegroom. Why? Because he is coming. Now, when is he coming? I don't know. Where he coming from? I don't know. Where he gonna stop? I don't know. I ain't sure, but one thing. When he comes back, I'm going back with it. Now, if he stop up in the air, I don't know how I'm gonna get up there, but I'm gonna get up there, or he gonna let out a rope and I'm gonna get whatever. I'm going back with him. That's something to talk about. Helping people to get some oil. Helping people to get some oil who are not preparing for the unexpecteds of life. Helping people to get some oil who don't care about seeing after their own welfare. Helping people to get oil who don't want it right now. Helping people to get oil who you know need it. They aren't concerned about getting it now, but you know they're going to need it. Our job is to help them to realize that they can't wait on us to give them what they need. They need to see about getting it for themselves, but they need help from us. How can we help? First of all, we've got to go out of our way to establish relationships with the people who may not have it. Did you get that? Establish relationships with the people who may not have it. Don't turn your back on the prostitutes. Invite them in. Don't reject the homeless because you're afraid of them. Invite them in. Stop condemning alcoholics and drug addicts. Invite them in. Stop looking down on homosexuals and lesbians. Invite them in. Tell them that God loves them just as they are and that you do too. Just tell and his love. That's why I like that song in the Hebrew. I love to tell the story of unseen things above, of Jesus and his glory, of Jesus and his love. I love to tell the story because I know it's true. It satisfies my longing like nothing else can do. I don't know about you, but I love to tell the story. It will be my theme in glory to tell the whole story of Jesus and his love. Do we have an obligation to the people who don't have any extra oil? Yeah. Maybe if we take more seriously our obligation to the people who are not preparing for themselves, maybe then we can make a change in the culture. God bless you. And God keep you.